The Diaries is brought to you by Quesadillas. Breakfast of champions, lunch of heroes, dinner of legends, quesadillas. Yes. Add some beans, add an egg, add some sauteed veggies, filling, cheap, quick, and kind of healthy. A dirtbag staple that can power you through a long day or fill you up after your day has turned into night. That's what the Diaries Plus means to this show. Diaries Plus members fuel it. They make it possible. You are quesadillas. I know that sounds weird, but that's okay. We're rolling with it. Your support makes all the things we are doing, 3 shows a month, reporting on public lands. We are grateful because you make it happen. So please consider becoming part of the 1 in 10 listeners who make this show available for everyone else. Your financial support powers this project, and we know we're going to make it to 20 years, which we didn't always. Link is in the show notes and on our website. Please consider joining the Diaries Plus and powering this show.
Fitz, I feel like whenever we're on a call or a meeting towards the end of the week, our conversation inevitably turns to our weekend plans. I mean, it's Wednesday right now, and I feel like we're already thinking about it. But it seems more often than not that you're usually planning on, getting your bike, going out for a ride, either by yourself or maybe with the family.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though, whether your time spent with mountain biking has ever taken you into the world of trail building.
Yeah, a little bit, for sure. It's not something I do all the time, but I definitely go participate in trail days, just kind of like to go put in that time. I like that feeling. I like participating in the creation of something that we all share and love. It's like a cool thing. I actually, honestly, I wish I had more time for it.
Yeah, I think a big theme that I've been exploring over the last month or so is that whatever you like to do outdoors, hiking, climbing, biking, whatever, yes, you are experiencing nature and the natural world, but someone or a group of people did a lot of work so that you can have that experience in the first place.
And maybe it meant something even really different too. So many of these things are almost like a layer, right? It's something that's come before, that's been reinterpreted, sort of redone or reestablished. It's wild when you think about that.
When you're introduced to an outdoor sport like running or biking or climbing or whatever your jam is, usually it's this equilateral triangle where people bring you in, and there's environment, there's athletic achievement, and there's community. And you kind of need all 3 of those things to feel welcomed into that sport, whatever you're doing outside.
This is Dylan Osleger. He's the author of Trail Work, which is this amazing book that covers the history of trails and public lands across the U.S.
And as you progress, as you get better at any given sport, that triangle kind of goes from equilateral to athletic ability is this on a pedestal, and community might get something, but a lot of times environment kind of gets the short end of the shrift there.
So I think Dylan has a point here. And, just speaking from my experience as a climber, not to say that climbers aren't concerned with conservation, but I think if every climber was as obsessed with environmental protections and conservation as they were with their project, I think that would carry a ton of political weight and persuasion. And I feel like the same could maybe be said for mountain bikers too.
Yeah, I think it could be said for a lot of us. We all have really busy lives, right? And it takes sometimes slowing down a little bit and putting an effort into seeing that need for participation, right? This stuff takes work. And I'm always so grateful for the people that are willing to put in that time.
Yeah, I think that triangle of athletic achievement, community, and environment, it's all going to come into play into the story that we're telling today. Orogenesis is a geological term. It's the natural process of mountain building. It's also the name of probably the most audacious trail projects in the United States.
The Orogenesis is this recipe. It's this creative vision that is made with old maps and forgotten trails, a community of absolutely stoked mountain bikers, and an incredibly awesome athletic first. This is the story of how a trail is made. I'm Fitz Cahal.
I'm Marco Seiler Gonzalez.
You're listening to the Dirtbag Diaries.
My name's Kurt Refsnyder. I'm a professional mountain biker, bike packer. I kind of fell in love with bikes as a kid and lived in a little neighborhood in Minnesota right above the Mississippi River, and there's a bunch of parkland and woods all along that. And just, as 8-year-old, 9-year-old, started riding bikes with my friends down in single track in those woods, and just kind of using the bike as a way to kind of explore in one direction, explore in another direction. And that just continued and increased in scale and scope.
Kurt's obsession with bikes pulled him in all different directions. He did velodrome racing in high school, cyclocross in grad school, but eventually Kurt's ambitions expanded beyond the oval track.
There was this race called the Grand Loop that had been going on for a couple years in western Colorado, eastern Utah, that was like 370 miles, I think. It was basically the first legitimate mountain bikepacking race. And so this was back in 2008. And I was like, wow, I wonder if I can even do something like that. And so it was, the complete opposite of this cyclocross racing, and signed up for it, trained, had no clue what I was doing. And so did that race, managed to finish in 2.5 days or something like that. And was like, I'm never doing that again. That was miserable. And then 2 weeks later, I was thinking about all the ways that I could have gone faster, all the things I learned. And that, that was kind of just the beginning of being in love with ultra racing and bike packing, and everything from trying to go really fast for these races for a couple days or 2 weeks to, months plus long expeditions.
Kurt eventually gets his PhD in earth science and starts teaching at Prescott College in Arizona, where he meets like-minded people in the bikepacking scene. But he quickly realizes that the ultra races and fun bike path routes don't just appear out of thin air. It takes a lot of work to establish trails, haggling with private and public land managers, and preserving what's already there. Kurt, along with friends, decided to launch a nonprofit with that mission in mind.
When we were launching bikepacking routes back in 2017, I guess, it was this whole awkward progression of things like, oh, we're creating a nonprofit. How do you create a nonprofit? I didn't know anything about that. I was a geologist.
So Kurt and his friends start looking out to other parts of the country. They need people with a proven track record in this arena.
Gabe was another person we reached out to because he had been doing some bikepacking guiding in Oregon, where he's from, and he had been working on development of the Oregon Timber Trail, which is a kind of single track focused route across Oregon.
My name is Gabriel Amadeus Tiller. I live in a little lumber town in Oregon called Mill City. It's funny because I've got trail maps I drew as a kid for the trails that I had just sort of, whacked the ferns down in between my forts.
Some kids get obsessed with playing soccer or swinging a baseball bat, but at a young age, Gabe was drawing maps and cutting trail. And when it comes to major trail development, Gabe cut his teeth on the Oregon Timber Trail. It's this predominantly single-track line through 700 miles of the Oregon backcountry, all of which require the rehabilitation of old trails across U.S. Forest Service lands. It also attracted a partnership with the Oregon State's Tourism Agency and a battalion of volunteers to establish arguably one of the most pristine single-track routes in the country.
It just feels good to create something with your hands. It's not just like a core group of shredders that are out building trails. We have people that are just kids, people that are, they're just kids out there. They're teenagers. We have people that are well into retirement, and people of all genders, et cetera. So it's just really cool to see the variety of people that come out to these events, and then the friendships that evolve from them.
When I was talking with Gabe Fitz, he mentioned that you actually were maybe one of the first ones to do the entire through ride of the Oregon Timber Trail. And I listened back to the episode where you kind of did a whole trip report on that experience. I'm curious what you kind of take away from that ride now.
Oh man, it was awesome. When I heard about the Orogenesis, I was like, yes, because I'd done the Oregon Timber Trail, and I didn't understand that for Gabe, this was he was building towards this bigger vision, because it is awesome. I feel like I've had these privileges through time to do things like the Oregon Timber Trail, right? It was really my first experience bike packing. But I've also got to spend time on the Appalachian Trail, right? And there is something just so powerful about moving forward on this daily. I mean, I like it on feet, but I think it's better on a bike. For me, it kind of brought together all the things I loved about kind of like alpine climbing. Like you had to go light. There's like a certain amount of effort you had to put into it. And like the less you brought, the better the experience was. And I had never really found anything outside of climbing like that until I did the Oregon Timber Trail. And it was, I don't know, it was just like one of those really powerful, cool experiences. I was really freaking psyched when I put my wheel in the Columbia River. And I was even more psyched, and I'm still psyched when I hear about the Orogenesis, because I'm like, whew, I need another month off to go tick off Washington.
Yeah. Even though Kurt hadn't ridden the Oregon Timber Trail yet, he was hearing from stories like yours and the biking world at large that Gabe's effort on the Oregon Timber Trail was a game changer for long-distance bikepacking.
You can tell that he's not a route builder, he's a route designer. Like there's all sorts of other considerations that go into it. And he has this love of old trails and maps and finding old trails on maps. These are, little old dashed lines that may or may not be there in the real world today, but being very driven to go out and see what it is and see if it actually can be a link between, whatever's to the east and whatever's to the west of that. And so I share so much passion for that sort of thing with him, but just seeing how he was able to basically bring that passion into creating routes for other people and create routes that are actually designed very, very intentionally and with the experiences of others in mind, not like what he wanted a route to be like necessarily, but what others would want the route to be like.
While on the board of the Bikepacking Routes nonprofit, Gabe mentioned to Kurt that he was plotting out a mega trail. I guess back then it was more of a concept. What if you could ride through the Oregon Timber Trail and just keep going?
Well, what if we extended this across Washington? Then it reaches Canada, and then across California, and then it connects to the Baja Divide, which already was there, and quite a popular winter bikepacking route.
Gabe was proposing a bikepacking route that spanned 5,000 miles across 2 countries, from the Canadian border all the way down to the southern tip of the Baja Peninsula, with the goal of getting as close to 100% single track as possible, which is a tall ask. The large wilderness areas across the U.S. don't allow biking, period, and even in national parks, to most bikers' chagrin, have very tight regulations on mountain biking.
Bikes aren't allowed in wilderness areas at all. In national parks, you can usually bike on paved roads, but not. It's even questionable sometimes whether you can bike on dirt roads that are open to vehicles, which seems crazy to me. And the same thing with the Pacific Crest Trail, right? The Pacific Crest Trail already exists, super popular through hiking route, but bikes aren't allowed on any of that. So ultimately, our guiding star is backcountry single track. I think that's really important. There are a lot of dirt double track routes for bikepacking or gravel routes for bikepacking, and they're fantastic. But the challenge of creating a single track route for bikepacking is a lot more, just because the trails don't have a dedicated transportation entity that's maintaining them, that's keeping them open for traffic. There are the land managers, but they have been underfunded for decades, and they rely on a lot of volunteer groups. I would say the landscape for maintaining the trail systems in the country are just a rustic than what we're dealing with on roads. Even the shitty roads that we see out there get taken care of, get a lot more, I think, love than we realize.
So Fitz, I kind of want to put a finer point on this because, I think Gabe's a pretty humble guy and might have a habit of underselling how big of a challenge this might be.
I mean, really, I think what he's doing is about as difficult a logistic mission that you could go on. Like sometimes you'll hear about like athletes being like, I worked on this project for 10 years, or I spent 5 years working towards this goal, right? And those are things like Alex Honnold freestyling El Cap. Those are things like Jim Morrison skiing off the north side of Everest, right? Those are big endeavors that take a long time. And what Gabe is doing is the sort of, I don't know, like public lands advocate equivalent of something like that. Like it is truly badass what he has done.
Yeah. I mean, just the idea of like trying to connect existing trails, let alone building new ones. I mean, you're already swimming against the current here.
Yeah.
It's insanely gnarly.
Here's Dylan Ostlager again. He actually consulted with Gabe kind of in the early days of Orogenesis, which he did not hesitate to say that he was a bit skeptical of at first.
When they were starting, like the amount of new trail that they needed to build was like almost like 100 or more miles. And I just told them, I was like, that's not possible.
Building new trail is really hard to do. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved. Breaking ground on trail could take years, not to mention hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, in order to make this project more realistic, Gabe needs to take advantage of already established trails.
There's 158,000 miles of trail in U.S. Forest Service land in the U.S. That's an insane amount of trail that exists in these plots. They consider about 26% of it maintained, up to like maybe 30 on like good years. Like the rest of that, the other 2/3 is considered like not great for travel or not travelable and impactful to the environment. So Gabe has done, admittedly, an insane amount of work looking for those old routes that connect around Oregon and Washington and down in Southern California and fire roads.
So even when you uncover those old trails, actually restoring those trails back to a usable condition is an entirely different challenge.
It did not get easier. So restoring single track is like, pick your poison. If you want to be down in Southern California, you're up against ceanothus and poison oak. So you need to have a short bladed chainsaw, so like a 6-inch mini Milwaukee. And you have to wade physically into poison oak rife ceanothus and with thorns all over it and cut off each branch while getting poison oak all over your body and getting like systemic reactions. If you want to pick the Sierra Nevada, you have like so many deadfall trees and branches and broad swaths of like steep granite terrain where you're going to be like, it wasn't built. None of these trails that are historic were designed for biking or even really like recreational hiking. Like most of this stuff was like horsepacking, gold mining, logging, and homesteading. Like those are your options. These were designed for a mule to go straight up the dang slope and like set up camp and bring, like no one anticipated having a bike on your shoulder, you know? So there's really steep, rugged terrain. But I guess all of this to say is like, even just picking like one trail to be a steward of, like a couple miles, is truly like the epitome of a Sisyphean task, where it's like literal rocks eroding down a hill. And your job is just to carry on that work that others have done in the past of pushing those rocks back up the hill and setting them in place for it to happen again. And like wildfires, heavy rains, like wind events, take your pick of like what's the new norm. I'm astounded, like I admire and like I try my best to like do my part in like adopting a couple trails and taking care of those miles like near home. To consider several thousand, that would be more than the entire U.S. Forest Service maintains on its own in a single year.
Clearly, Gabe cannot do this alone. To pull this off, you need buy-in from local stakeholders that are already doing trail maintenance and access work. So Gabe started to connect the dots, organizing different trail and rider associations up and down the West Coast under one decentralized umbrella. Here's Kurt.
And then very quickly, there were 20 other people that were very, very engaged and involved with it, all up and down the West Coast corridor. And so I was just kind of watching with, I don't know, I think awe in the way that Gabe got so many people and so many trail organizations really excited about this very monumental vision really quickly. And I think, you know, having what he created with the Oregon Timber Trail as like, hey, that's, you know, Gabe did that.
Gabe needed like-minded people, single-track zealots like himself to take Orogenesis from concept to reality. Gabe caught wind of Chris McNamara, who, at the time, was just starting to work on his own version of the Oregon Timber Trail in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. After the break, Chris Mack enters the chat. Stay with us.
I went running yesterday, and that was awesome, because I had to take a long time off because I hurt my knee. Boo. And it felt so good. I didn't go that far, but you know what didn't happen? I didn't get any blisters. My little feetsies, they were so well protected because I was wearing darn tough running socks. They have got my feet covered, and I'm very grateful for that. They've been making awesome socks for over 40 years in Vermont. They pride themselves on using merino wool sourced from America and around the world, and they back it up with an unconditional guarantee for life, which I wish my knees came with, but they don't. That's fine. I'll work through it. If these aren't the longest lasting socks you've ever owned, return them for another pair. Darn Tough is offering free shipping on any order for Diaries listeners. Use the code DIRTBAG at checkout. We'll put a link in the show notes, or visit darntough.com to find your new favorite pair of socks. Your feet deserve it. Thanks, Darn Tough, for supporting the show. Seriously, you make it possible, and we're grateful. Bike racks and truck tailgates. I don't know if they were made to go together like peanut butter and jelly. I don't always think so. But That is why we love our pivot swing hitch from Kuat, because it makes them be like, peanut butter and jelly. It's way easier to get to all the other gear we need for our ride out of the truck. Arm swings out, access to everything. Amazing. The Pivot version 3 builds on Kuat's best-selling swing-away hitch adapter with refined upgrades that improve stability. With quick-release 90-degree and 120-degree swing-away positions, you get unobstructed access to tailgates, rear doors, and cargo areas without removing your bike rack or gear. Dope. Available in both driver and passenger side swing options, it adapts to a wide range of vehicles with a 2-inch hitch. Backed by Kuat's No Worries limited warranty, it's built to perform wherever your adventures lead. Kuat, because you love your gear and you like getting to the back of your truck. As the days get longer, it makes it easier for me to get out on the trails, which I love. I can go early with the birds when they wake up, or I can stay out late and catch the sunset with friends. Whether you're scrambling up a rocky ridge or trekking through mossy, sun-dappled forests, or maybe you've got your sights set on something bigger like the AT, PCT, or CDT, Oboz has something for you. They craft purpose-built footwear with an unrivaled feel and rugged durability. They are committed to making better footwear and protecting our planet. From using recycled materials to powering their headquarters with clean energy, every step they take is intentional. And because they plant trees for every pair sold, Oboz is helping to rebuild the places we love. Thanks to Oboz for supporting the show, but more importantly, thanks for leading in a global movement to do business differently. To find your next pair of footwear, check out obozfootwear.com/lovehiking. Oboz Footwear. Love hiking. So I've been traveling a lot this year. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it is awesome. Go to some incredible places. I've been actually putting some of the cassava I've been using in a Ziploc bag, which isn't always ideal, but I've really appreciated being able to travel with that stuff. So I am psyched that Cassava now has travel packs. It makes it super easy to pack a few in my bag, whatever direction I'm headed. Cassava's whole body meal shake keeps your body and mind nourished all day, no matter where you are, even backpacking. With 2 scoops of Cassava, you get 85 plus superfoods, nutrients, and plant-based ingredients. So not only am I getting 25 grams of plant-based protein, I'm also getting adaptogens and supergreens at the same time. Cassava has 7 flavors to choose from, including their newer ones, coffee and strawberry. Yeti coffee. Take your daily ritual with you. Go to Kachava.com and use the code DIARIES for 15% off your first order. That's Kachava, KACHAVA.com, code DIARIES.
I didn't know who Chris was. Someone recommended I should reach out to him, or maybe he reached out to me. He dropped me a pin, and I camped out there and sort of froze my ass off, but then woke up and I was like in one of those, just like the aspen groves in fall. It was like everything was covered in frost. Everything was like this nuclear yellow aspen grove around me. It was just a beautiful setting. Then he proceeded to drag me around on a bunch of cow trails over by Sonora Junction. And I was like, yeah, okay, this guy gets it. He's totally the right kind of guy. So he's got a lot of talent, and he put a ton of that talent into actually on the ground bushwhacking. He goes out by himself bushwhacking when he, most of the time, because he can't find, he's made enough of a reputation for himself, but now can't find people to go with him, I guess.
Yeah, so my nickname is Bushwhacknamara, so there is a fair bit of bushwhacking. Don't ever go on a trip with me without long pants and long sleeves and very good protective eyewear.
Chris McNamara might be least known for his trail development. He's the author of several climbing guidebooks, notable first ascensionist and former wingsuit base jumper. He's a mountain renaissance man with one driving ethos.
To me, everything is first ascents. First ascents from the climbing world led into the first, descents or exits in the base jumping world, which led to, for me, the entire point of all this is to make connections, to go into unknown areas and figure out creatively how to get from one place to the other. I actually don't really love just going out and riding existing stuff that much. I'm a little one-sided in that perspective.
Chris's obsession with single track dates back to 2015 after he settled into his home in South Lake Tahoe.
Hey, we live in Lake Tahoe. Shouldn't we probably have a bikeable trail around this lake? And the Forest Service was open to it. And so they let me go and bushwhack for 2 years and come back to them with this kind of astounding finding that the trail was almost all there. But since that kind of went way faster than I ever thought it would, I started thinking about, well, the next cool thing would be to connect Tahoe to Mammoth. I dirt biked it a ton. It's one of the most stunning sections of, mountains that I think I've seen in the world. And so in that process is when I started hearing from people that there was this super motivated guy, Gabe Tiller, who had created a trail across Oregon and was now realizing through that process he could create a trail all the way from Cabo to Canada. And as soon as I heard about that, I was like, I am all in for figuring out how the Sierra section I'm obsessed with could play into his bigger dream.
Chris's passion for whacking down new trails slowly took form into what would become a pivotal section for the Orogenesis, this 500-mile stretch of mainly single-track terrain that stretches nearly the entire length of the Sierra Nevada mountain range.
So what stands out about Sierra Camino is the potential to, over time, get to 80, maybe even 90% single track. The subjective metric is just the Sierra. I think it's one of the more beautiful mountain ranges in the world. It has some of the best weather. And when you drop into the Eastern Sierra, you're back to the objective of being objectively one of the most dramatic changes in elevation of any place in the world. So you put all those factors together, I think it's magic. Also, when you're traveling through these areas, it's almost all public land. It's, very few people, very far from a major population center. At the same time, you have these really small towns. Some of the smallest towns in the state of California, for example, are on this trail. And you go into these towns and they're totally unique, magical little towns that could really use a little more energy. They've all had kind of extractive industries in their past that fueled them that are now gone. And so having thoughtful, sustainable recreation is part of most of rural California's, future playbook.
By 2025, Gabe, with the help from Chris and dozens of other local stakeholders, had managed to piece together, on paper, a trail from Canada to Mexico. But it was still theoretical. It's one thing to connect the dots on a map. It's another to actually put tires down and ride it. Here's Kurt.
There was still some uncertainty in it. Like, there had been a lot of scouting along the ways, but there's still pieces that hadn't been scouted. There were connections that had been, mapped out on router's GPS and satellite imagery and things like that, but hadn't been ground truthed. So much of the focus with the scouting was on the backcountry trails to do these trails actually connect? What condition are they in? And then, get down to a valley, and the excitement of scouts was like, okay, now let's check the next section of trail and skip across the valley. And so those were the sorts of pieces that hadn't been nailed down in a lot of places.
The big question was not if the Orogenesis could be ridden, but who would actually do it?
There's a lot of people who want to ride it. I want to ride it. But I knew it needed to be someone who had, some influence, I guess. I hate that word now, but, Kurt's a respected bike packer, a respected athlete. So I wanted whatever the first impression of the route be, to have it, hold some weight. People are actually going to take, have some reference for who's giving this trip report. But the big thing for me is I knew it needed to be somebody that could suffer.
Kurt had earned a reputation over the years for the acute talent of doing really hard things.
I just love backcountry single track, hard backcountry trails in really wild places. And to me, it doesn't really matter how hard they are, as long as it gets you someplace cool. I'm totally for it. If that means pushing your bike for half the day, cool. As long as it's, get some reward for it later, that's enough. I think for the last 3 years or so, I've kind of had this personal philosophy of I shouldn't shy away from the things that make me nervous or that I feel a little bit apprehensive about taking on. In 2023, I decided I was going to try to ride both the Iditarod Trail across Alaska, which is a 1,000-mile long winter route, and then the Continental Divide Trail was another one that it'd been in the back of my mind as something maybe I should try to ride that for 10 years.
The Continental Divide Trail is one of the through hikes among the Triple Crown backpacking routes in the United States, and it's the only one that's available to mountain bikers. Only 3 other people have successfully biked the CDT.
the CDT is like 70% open to bikes. And so 2023, I was like, cool, I'm going to do that rod, going to do that. This might be a ridiculously stupid idea because of how hard both of those are, but they both happened. I pulled through on both of them. They were awesome.
Well, with the things like the CDT, I mean, and this is a safe space if you want to brag about yourself, but it's like, what do you think allows you to kind of push through those challenges? Because, I mean, part of it's obviously physicality, but there's a mindset to it.
I get asked that a lot, and especially like how does it seem like you enjoy such hard things so much? You also know from experience, you learn that yes, things get really hard and they always get better at some point. And sometimes when they get better, then they're really, really good for a while, push through a really hard, whatever the scenario. And either that gets you to a huge reward or just you work through that and then it feels like smooth sailing for a while. And you can have so much fun in that. And then I think the other part of it is just really being invested in what you choose to do and just being very conscious of like, yep, I chose this. Like, it's my fault. I'm here right now dealing with this, but that was my choice. And I knew this was going to happen along the way. And so that kind of gets you out of this, like trying to blame, who designed this route or who built this trail. It's like, no, you knew that there were going to be places like this. You chose to do this. And so if you don't have anyone else to place the blame on, it's much easier to just be like, okay, yep, I did. Here I am. And work through it and then get back to having fun.
For Gabe and Chris, Kurt's experience and grit was the perfect fit for a test piece like the Orogenesis.
Before Kurt started his ride, I wasn't sure we should call it a first ride. I thought maybe we should tell the world this is a scouting mission. And luckily, I surround myself with people who are smarter than me. They were like, no, this isn't a scouting mission. This is the first ride. I was like, okay, I guess it's a little high stakes. Hopefully he doesn't get to the end of it and say like, yeah, that was fine. That was okay.
I knew Kurt had it in him, and that sort of was maybe my my security blanket a little bit, because I was like, I don't know how much this is going to suck, but I knew Kurt could suffer through it.
I had never ridden in Washington. I had only ridden probably, maybe 2 weeks total in California. And I had done a couple cross races in Oregon. And so pretty much the entire route corridor was unfamiliar to me, which was awesome. Like, it's been a while since I've done a big adventure that is in just completely unfamiliar terrain for me. And so that was a big draw. And then when Gabe was like, yeah, it's not there, like not ready to release publicly, but it's close. Like, that was enough. It was cool to go do something no one else had ever done. It's also a little daunting because setting out on something the scale of Orogenesis and knowing that no one had ever ridden it and I had no hand in putting any of it together other than like a little piece in California, it's putting a lot of trust in other people that, it does actually work, it is good riding. It's not over the top difficult kind of thing. And so I think I was excited about the uncertainty that comes with that. Like, it elevates the level of adventure, I think, in my mind, to do something like that before anyone else.
The preparation for Orogenesis didn't just come down to fitness. This was a self-supported attempt. So Kurt needed to do a lot of homework on how he would stay alive on this trail.
All the scouting had been done, but they were so focused on identifying what trails are we going to use, what condition is the trail in, does work need to be done on the trail, that very few of the scouts were actually like taking note of water sources and like resupply locations or anything like that. So basically I got a red line that I opened up and routed with GPS track all the way across the country with no other information on it other than that. A lot of that kind of just like basic information that countless trips now I've gone through that process of putting that kind of information together. But for a 3,000 mile long route, that was like dozens of hours of homework, just trying to piece all that stuff together. But that is also one of the things that then makes the experience when you're out there so much more fun, is like, if you know where stuff is, know how much water roughly you need to carry probably for the next section. Like, you don't get yourself into situations where you're like out of water, running low on food and having to ration for a day, things like that. Like, just better plan going into it means more fun while you're out there.
Well, once you did kind of, get further into the research, did you start building up any kind of expectation for yourself on the trip of like, okay, like you're starting to build like a goal, or is it just like, I just want to get this done with integrity, or, like not epic the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest goal is I just want to enjoy it. Like, I'm doing this for myself. I want to have fun out there. I didn't want it to be harder than the CDT because the CDT was just, it was an exhaustingly challenging experience. And again, I loved it, but it was, I didn't need something that hard again. And I also knew that if Orogenesis was that hard, it didn't bode well for the future of the route and like other people actually wanting to ride it. But that was completely out of my control since that was up to all Gabe and all the scouts that had been putting everything together. So like I didn't want it to be too hard, but I didn't have control over that part of it. And I think I just wanted to be efficient. Like I definitely wasn't racing in any way. Like I wasn't trying to go quickly, but I wanted to go efficiently so that I wasn't out there for like an excessive amount of time because, the US part of it alone, I was predicting like 2.5 months or so, 2.5 to 3 months to finish. And then Baja is another 1,600 miles. And so there was that just like, I want to be able to move efficiently so that I'm enjoying myself out there, but still moving steadily enough that like by the time it's the holidays, I'm done and not riding into the new year.
Have you ridden any sections of what would be considered orogenesis in Washington?
Yeah. So I have, but I've never done it quite like how it's put together. And that's rad. Like I've done other bikepacking trips that cover really similar ground or even the same ground, but are loops. But what the team at Orogenesis built, it's like this very unique thing. And it's really cool to see how they look at it and how they go about it and what they're eyeing up to make this thing. And it's super inspiring. Like literally, I'm just like, can I go tomorrow?
On August 4th, 2025, Kurt pedaled alongside the Okanagan River, divided by the invisible US-Canada border.
Washington is the first highlight that comes to mind. It was also so much really good backcountry trail, and it was so much moto trail, which I love riding moto trail. Some people don't like that style of riding because it tends to be steeper and a little bit looser than non-motorized single track does. But what it meant in this case was that I was there in August, the moto community, it tends to be really good about clearing out deadfall on trails because it's hard to get motos over down trees. And so I think we had to climb over like a dozen downed trees in the entirety of Washington. Whereas when I rode the CDT, I probably climbed over 3,000 down trees or something, like just a ridiculous amount of them. And so I was a little apprehensive about that same sort of experience on Orogenesis and was just delighted at how little there was in Washington and how good the trails were. And, riding among volcanoes was very novel for me. And it was also, there's like 125,000 feet of climbing and descending in 700 miles in Washington. So it was super rugged, but I also love that kind of terrain. So I just enjoyed all of that so much. And it was the kind of thing, like if my trip had to end for some reason at the end of Washington, I would have been stoked. Like so worth it from that. And then down in California, the Sierra Camino section that Chris Mack has been working on for a while, from kind of the Lost Sierra in Northern California, so like above Downeyville area, basically from there all the way down to Truckee and past Lake Tahoe, and then down to Markleeville. So it's like probably a week long or a little over a week long section. Just so much really good trail. It's beautiful. And you're getting into a zone that has a lot more riders, and just the trails they're not necessarily easy, but they're more trafficked and better maintained than some of the more remote backcountry trails. And so it's just stuff that like you get onto. It's like, wow, this is fun riding. Like it's technical trail, but I can cover ground and, kind of make up some time after all the miles of harder, slower stuff farther north. And yeah, Chris had just done such a good job of linking together fun sections of trail through all of that. And it's cool because in that area, he had lots of choices for what trails to incorporate, because there are a lot of trails. It's not like there's just one way that connects through. So that section I got through and just was like, wow, that was an amazing week of riding.
Kurt continued riding south, bordering along the John Muir Wilderness, down into the high desert of Lone Pine, up and through the Sequoia National Forest, eventually spitting out into the San Gabriel Mountains that tower over Los Angeles. After 80 days and 3,000 miles of riding, Kurt reached the border of Mexico. From there, he rode another 65 days and 1,600 miles to San Jose del Cabo, at the very southern tip of the Baja Peninsula.
there's never been a long trail, like a trail like this across the country, built with mountain bikes in mind.
Right.
I mean, the closest is like the Arizona Trail that has been welcoming to and incorporating kind of a mountain bike vision from the beginning. Very, equestrian hiker and mountain bikes. And Colorado Trail has evolved to be very welcoming to mountain bikes, but that wasn't part of the initial vision from my understanding. But then, scale that up by like 5 times the distance or something like that. And then you've got Orogenesis. And so, there's nothing else like it in the world. And so right now it's half single track, and it sounds like in a few years it'll be, maybe a decade, it'll be considerably more single track than it is today.
Thanks to the effort of Kurt, Gabe, Chris, and a whole host of volunteers and trail riders, Orogenesis is no longer just a line on the map.
I mean, really I'm just proud of it, I think. It's funny, like it is a creative endeavor, because what you're trying to do is tell a story, but like it's like one of those Scholastic Book Fair stories where you get to choose your own adventure, like I don't know exactly what like a rider is going to do. Like I'll give them a line on the map, but I can almost guarantee they're not going to follow the line exactly. And before Kurt even started, he had already redrawn my line a bunch in bunch places, but you want to you want to tell a story with the route. So I wasn't just trying to make it the fastest or most direct route. It's like you want it to be fun, but you also want it to be beautiful, but you also want it to have some burgers and milkshakes along the way too. You try to think about all these different components and what kind of experience you're trying to create for people, but know that you can't be overly prescriptive, right? It's not a guided tour.
Kurt riding the trail, I think, injected us with a lot of energy. And so now we're just trying to think, how do we thoughtfully get the flywheel moving, build on the momentum, make sure that at no point do we go too fast and not really think thoughtfully about the direction. But I think now it's just make the trail better every year, make the trail more maintained every year, and make sure that it has a durable, sustainable future by creating the fundraising and the organization around it.
The sustainability of the Orogenesis demands people who care, who might choose to spend their weekend clearing deadfall or learning how to use a chainsaw. But it also takes a visionary.
Is this really the nicest guy in the world? Like, is this who? And yeah, that is who he is. Like, that is Gabe.
Yeah.
He's just such a lovable guy. And somehow that comes through, that personality comes through in his work and in the way that he talks about route development and gets people on board and builds community to help create these routes, the way that he would just make everyone feel so invited and welcome to those, no matter what their background was and what their experience with or around chainsaws or lack there, anything, like just making it very welcoming and all about just having a good time together as a community of folks who love trails for one reason or another.
Thanks Gabe, Chris, Kurt, and Dylan for sitting down to talk with us about Orogenesis. Right now, the team at Orogenesis is on a mission to launch the 375-mile Sierra Camino section of the trail to the public, as well as an updated Oregon Timber Trail route that features even more single track. Guess what? That takes money, and while we can't all make the volunteer days, we can become a part of something legendary. Hey, it feels good to get behind an idea. Donations go a long way. Link is in the show notes, or you can visit orogenesiscollective.org to learn more. Speaking of good ideas and community stepping up, thank you to all who power this show and who allow these stories and ideas to find their way into the community. You open access for others, and we are deeply grateful. Please consider becoming a Diaries Plus members. Link is in the show notes. Find out more. Our stories come from friends and from friends of friends. In fact, this is how this story arrived in our world. Thanks, Timmy O'Neill. Give us a shout at editor@ducktapedandbeer.com. Music today by Drexler, Greg John, Man in the Moon, Andrew Lepau, Sunshades, and Otros. Jacob Bain and Nis Cotto composed our theme song. Today's show was produced by Marco Seiler Gonzalez and me. Additional editing and mixing by Evan Phillips. Lauren Delani Miller is our senior producer. Art by Walker Cahal. Daniel Jungworth is our social media production intern, and Becca Cahal is our executive producer. I'm Fitz Cahal, and you've been listening to the Dirtbag Diaries. Welcome to And Then What, the segment where we break down the headlines, figure out what the hell's happened since then. So it's summer, which is incredible. We have perfect weather right now. It's great. I hope it stays that way because summer for a lot of us has also become synonymous with wildfire and smoke. From 2020 to 22, wildfires far surpassed the 10-year annual average of 1.2 million acres. Those record years, they were sparked by extraordinary heat and drought conditions. This year, we're kind of worried the similar thing is going to happen. 80% of snow-tell sites, these are the sites where water content and snow are measured. In the West, many of these sites, they met the criteria for snow drought. There's less water in the system. Back east, heat and a lack of rain have intensified drought conditions. At the same time, the Forest Service, one of the agencies responsible for wildland firefighting, they've had a lot of their budget cut. How is this impacting our firefighters, the people tasked with controlling and putting these fires out? We sat down with Reva Duncan, the board president of Grassroots Wildland Firefighters, who advocates for the well-being of firefighters. Think pay, benefits, working conditions, hazard pay, limited staffing. They care for our wildland firefighters. It's incredible work. She's also been on the front line. Reva's career in fire spanned 32 years from working on crews and fuels management to serving as the forest fire chief on the Umpqua National Forest. Let's dig in. Grassroots Wildland Firefighters released a report detailing that wildfire prevention preparation was down 38% in 2025. Can you talk about what were the factors that led to that decline?
We took a snapshot of the last 4 years because we didn't, 1 year doesn't tell a lot of the story. But it was a steady decline and then really kind of pretty sharper downturn last fiscal year. Mm-hmm. And, we attributed that to several things like declining budgets, certainly, but also declining workforce. And not just the full-time fire workforce, but there are a lot of folks, you'll hear them called militia. I don't like that term. I like collateral duty folks who assist in the planning on, these fuels work, but also really play a huge part in the implementation of a lot of this. And there was so much uncertainty at the beginning of the calendar year with the new administration and, the layoffs, the Doge cuts, you hear it called the Valentine's Day Massacre. And so that just threw a lot of things, there wasn't a lot of work getting done because of a lot of the uncertainty and not knowing and not having the people. And there wasn't just a focus on that. So that definitely contributed a lot to it.
So this was something that was trending in this direction of even though the fire seasons have become more intense, there was a sort of slow degradation in the preparation for wildfires. And then it was exacerbated by everything that went on in the beginning of 2025.
Yeah. Yep. You got that right.
Across the West right now, it has been a historically low snowpack. Many states have already entered into drought. There's obviously with that an increased risk for fires. When you see this happen, we see preparation down, you see drought up. As a firefighter, where does your mind go?
First about the West, the low snowpack, the drought. But I live in Asheville, North Carolina right now, and we're in a statewide burn ban. And it's the Southeast's spring fire season right now. And so there are pretty catastrophic fires already in Georgia and Florida, homes being lost. Mm-hmm. And so I like to remind people it's not just a Western problem. And then if the East plays into it, where we have droughts in the East, where we normally don't, usually the East greens up, the humidity comes up. And so all those folks can support the Western fire season. If the East stays in persistent drought and doesn't get the rain and still gets fires going into the summer, mm-hmm. then that is, a focus on having and needing resources in the Southeast and the East in the summer, where normally we can shift those folks to the West. So I think about already a tough place we are with staffing and having enough people, but then that could just really, really affect the capacity of firefighting, as we go into the peak Western part of the summer. So I do think about that. I do have concerns about that. My concern always falls with the firefighters. My organization advocates for the boots on the ground. And I just think about, another huge burden shared by the people on the ground doing the most dangerous and risky work. And that's, I think, why we're seeing the numbers in the workforce have been declining.
Yeah. If you look at government employees, I would say probably next to maybe astronauts, like our wildland firefighters are beloved.
Yeah.
You go, if you're in a Western town or an Eastern town or any town that's been impacted by fire or just in general, you'll see signs up on the, side of barns, like thanks firefighters, or it just, people care about our firefighters because they know it's a dangerous job. They know it's being, it's like a difficult job. And it seems like on a level that despite all that care from the public or concern for firefighters is that these people aren't being treated as well as they should for how difficult a job they have. Do you see it like that?
There's a gap.
Yeah.
And I think, it used to be that the wildland firefighters were in the back country and they didn't roll through Main Street USA like we have our structure fire departments. And so they were largely unseen and misunderstood. And I think my organization has helped with that. Certainly some of the media attention on wildland firefighters has helped the public and even legislators understand this workforce and the sacrifices they make. But they are beloved. But again, I think people still don't understand the differences and the federal workforce can be dispatched anywhere in the US and its territories. And so they're not sleeping in a fire station and work 3 days and off 4. They're away for 2 weeks minimum, sometimes 3 weeks, and back home, maybe they get their R&R in place 2 to 3 days, and then they're back at it. And so it's a very, very demanding profession.
Mm-hmm. The Forest Service recently announced a major reorganization. They shuttered research stations. They've kind of consolidated many of the districts. Some of those research stations were conducting long-term studies of wildfire risks. How will that impact wildland firefighting? Like, how does it impact the firefighters?
I do have serious concerns about, we've already lost researchers who took the deferred resignation and the early buyout. We've already lost them, a lot of them. And so I worry about this consolidation and that we'll lose more researchers and then we'll lose more research. So it is very concerning. Is the agency being set up to fail? So it either can be turned over to states to manage, right? There's a big state agreement now between the Forest Service state of Utah, the Forest Service state of Idaho. And so I don't think it's paranoia. I think it's a valid concern, knowing what the administration, prioritizes and emphasizes, and they like privatization. But I think it's really also terribly naive to think that if you privatize or even put them under state agencies, that this federal workforce will follow and go along. And I can tell you a lot of them won't. So it's not a trade-off. It's not, a 1-to-1. And I think people are thinking about, well, what's the next shoe to drop, right? What is next? And so, it's in the back of my mind, certainly, because you can't just, keep cutting the budgets, which then cuts the workforce. And it's already in a really terrible place where people, are being forced to do more with less. And you get to a point where you get to the breaking point and there's not a lot people can do. So, yeah.
Yeah. Does it feel like we're close to that breaking point?
I don't think so. I don't think we're there yet. And hopefully we won't get there, but I think people need to be thinking about that.
We want to give people a way to take action, maybe that people can help out. What are ways that we could support our wildland firefighters right now? Or there's specific asks that we should be reaching out to our elected officials about?
Right. Well, you asked me about this upcoming fire season, and it looks dire. We still need the ignitions, right? The conditions can be awful, but if we don't have the ignitions, then we're okay. And so it is a lot of unknown. The conditions can set up. And, if we get dry lightning, we can't control that. But we need the public to really think twice about what they're doing. We need them to be really, really careful with campfires. We need them to be careful with burning debris in their yards. We need to make sure they're securing the chains on their vehicle if they're towing something, because 90% of wildfires are caused by human beings, and usually it's preventable, right? So we really need the public to help firefighters out by let's not start those fires, right, where we can control that. When we get into the advocacy, Yeah, our website has a place where we make it really easy on people to contact their own legislator. They don't have to look anything up. They punch in a few things like their zip code, and we'll take you to that. And so when you hear about proposed legislation, or if you just want to get a shout out to support wildland firefighters, that's a great place to start too. And then we have a newsletter that we put a lot of information out there with pending legislation, what's going on within the agency and the professions. And so if people want to sign up for our newsletter, we have a lot of timely information. And so we want people to be informed, and we want the people who love our wildland firefighters to understand what they're facing.
We're posting these pieces on our website, dirtbagdiaries.com, in case you want to share. And then what? Thanks to Diaries Plus members for making this reporting possible. Links are on our website and in the recent show notes. Thank you for caring about public lands.